His crimes confounded the police.
Every time you don't get them, every day it goes by, somebody else could be dead.
He terrorized an entire city.
Not a whole lot of people got a whole lot of sleep at that time.
And tore families apart.
He took something precious away from every single one of us.
This is the story of one of the most fearsome serial killers America has ever seen.
This is a guy who's not crazy, he's just bad.
Rochester lies on the banks of the Genesee River in the state of New York. It's a peaceful city and a favorite spot for fishermen, hikers, and holidaymakers. But like every other city in North America, Rochester has its problems. No one knows more about these than local crime reporter Corey Williams.
I always tell people that I had really strange crime stories in my 2 years in Rochester, New York. In the late 80s, Rochester was a working class town. Some areas were pretty depressed. There was definitely a town where you really needed to know where you were at all times and where you were going and who you were with.
On the banks of the Genesee River run Lake and Lyle Avenue, the heart of the city's red light district. Here, amongst the strip clubs and bars, Rochester's prostitutes ply their trade. One of Lake and Lyle's working girls is 27-year-old Dorothy Blackburn. On the 15th of March, 1988, she is working the street as usual.
Hey, sexy. What are you looking for?
Most of the prostitutes had pimps. But once they were picked up by John and driven away, that protection and safety net was gone. It was just them.
The client pays Dorothy $20 and heads to a car park on the edge of Lake and Lyle. Whilst performing oral sex, Dorothy Blackburn bites him, drawing blood.
Sorry, baby.
With Dorothy Blackburn drifting in and out of consciousness, her attacker heads to the secluded countryside by the Genesee River.
People who live and do their things in the street, they do feel invincible. I can take care of myself. I'm tough. You're not so tough when there's someone who's bigger than you or someone has to drop on you. When you have somebody whose hands are around your neck, or if they have you trapped in a car or in a wooded area where you can't scream for help. You can scream, but nobody will hear you.
The killer dumps Dorothy's body in an isolated creek. When her body is discovered a week later, there are no forensic clues and no evidence of sexual assault. The case lands on the desk of Lynn Johnson of Rochester Police.
I look every murder. I've been around for a long time, been to, well over 1,000. And each one of them, you know, you just can't understand why somebody would do this to somebody else.
The murder of a prostitute provokes little public reaction.
Sometimes I don't think the average ordinary citizen really cares because it doesn't involve them. It doesn't involve their life and their peaceful existence.
But this is not an attitude shared by the investigators of Rochester Police.
If a mother of four is murdered in her own home and a prostitute is found in a field, yeah, I think there's probably maybe a different attitude. But, you know, the way we look at it, it's still a human being, and we're going to do our best to solve the crime.
However, the killer remains one step ahead of the police. In September 1988, local resident Hector Maldonado is searching for deposit bottles by the banks of the Genesee River.
And he came across what he thought was a deer carcass to begin with. And what he saw as he moved some of the leaves, that this skeleton actually had a tank top and a pair of shorts, and then he knew that it was human.
A second body, abandoned by the Genesee River. But this body is completely decomposed.
Nature does its business. Flies will attack the protein, which is like your eyes or nose orifice, ears, mouth.
The police immediately try to work out the identity of this victim and how she died.
There was no blunt force trauma, the skull was intact, there was no broken bones, there was no marks on the bones that would show that there was a knife wound on it or bullet wounds. So all the obvious things were eliminated.
The police must identify the victim before they can solve the mystery of her death. Until they do, the killer is free to strike again. September 1988, Rochester, New York. Police have a dead body on their hands. A woman found by the banks of the Genesee River. But the police need help to identify the body. They call in forensic anthropologist William Rodriguez.
Without an identification of a victim, many times the crime remains unsolved.
Decomposition has left virtually no forensics to work with.
In a wooded and a wet environment, the body is going to decompose very rapidly because of that environment.
Nonetheless, there is one critical clue to suggest how this person died.
There is a small bone in the neck known as the hyoid bone. And many times in individuals that are strangled or have some type of blunt force trauma to the neck, a portion or areas of this bone are fractured. It was obvious that this individual had been strangled.
By examining the skull and estimating tissue depth, Dr. Rodriguez is able to recreate an image of the victim.
It is placed in the media, whether the television, newspapers, in hopes that someone will recognize this individual.
Immediately, someone does.
I believe it was the next day, the father calls and identifies his daughter.
The remains belong to 27-year-old Anna Stephan, a mother of two. She had fallen into drug addiction and prostitution after the death of her sister. She has had no contact with her father for over a year. He doesn't even know she is missing.
It's not uncommon for a prostitute to go off with somebody or be strung out and be missing for days and days or weeks and then reappear on the street. Being missing is not uncommon at all. It's why people target them.
And in 1988, prostitution in Rochester is a deadly game. Anna Stephan is the second woman found dead by the Genesee River. Among the city's prostitutes, a rumor spreads they are being targeted by a serial killer. But prostitutes like Patty Ives need to work. In September 1989, 1 year after the discovery of Anna Stephan, she takes a client to the banks of the Genesee River.
Take it easy, baby. Don't need to play rough.
You ain't seen rough lately.
I know who you are. I know it's you that...
4 weeks later, the remains of Patty Ives are discovered by children playing nearby. As with Dorothy Blackburn and Anna Steffen, there is little evidence of sexual assault and no forensic clues. Rochester police are alarmed that 3 prostitutes have been murdered in quick succession.
We're thinking what's going on with all the prostitutes, because our numbers are a little higher than they were before.
One of Captain Johnson's most experienced men, Investigator William Barnes, has a theory.
We specialized in homicides for 13 years, and this was different. It was definitely different. Normally when we find dead girls are behind a building in a vacant lot. These girls, we was trying to hide them. And it just hit me that these aren't the average girls that are getting killed on Lyle Avenue. When the body came out from under the bushes and that board was on it, that's when I said, I think we have a serial killer here. And I think we have a serial killing.
Initially, the police don't go public with Investigator Barnes' theory. They don't want to panic the city. But Barnes isn't the only person in Rochester who has reached this conclusion.
I'd come to work at 6 a.m. for the Times-Union, and there was a report that there was a body found beneath a cardboard box. Later found out it was a lady in her 20s. Name was Patricia Ives. And the police listed her death as a natural death, which got me to start thinking women in their 20s don't crawl into cardboard boxes beneath bushes and just die. Something just didn't sit right.
Corey Williams decides to go down to Lake and Lyle to investigate. What he discovers astonishes him.
And I was interviewing some of the working girls, some of the prostitutes, and I was speaking to one young lady, and her name was Maria Welch, and she flat out told me, there's a guy out here killing the girls.
Hey, baby. Want a date?
Soon, she too goes missing.
It hurt to know that only a few days, a few weeks before I'd spoken to this woman. She was young. She was attractive. She didn't appear to have been out on the streets a long time.
Shortly after the disappearance of Maria Welsh, another prostitute, Elizabeth Gibson, also disappears. Corey Williams decides he has enough to go to press.
We ran a story in the Rochester Times-Union saying the Rochester police deny a serial killer is working in the city. That night, another body was found.
When the story breaks, the police are not amused.
So now you're trying to concentrate on what you got to do. You got this whole media frenzy on the other, which is their job. I mean, but we're so tied up with trying to save people's lives, we don't really have time for them.
Fear settles over Rochester, and not just on Lake and Lyle.
Throughout the Rochester area, even in the suburbs, parents watch their kids closer. Teenage girls typically walked in groups. It pervaded. The fear, the uncertainty.
Rochester police scour their records and talk to anyone suspicious. Everyone from recently paroled criminals to even those caught committing minor misdemeanors on Lake and Lyle.
One of the things was checking every parking ticket going back for 2 years that was issued in all this area. Going through everyone, then running it and finding out who it is, where they live, checking our database against them.
But the trail stays cold. With little to go on, Rochester police investigators Barnes and Borriello work their contacts